Hello and welcome to Inspired Earth, everybody. I hope that you guys are having a great week. We've got a resurgence of the biological revolution this week. A new life form has appeared within the human body that we had no idea existed. We're gonna talk about that in the mid-segment. But to start off, I just have some strange news and increasing strangeness. And to begin the strange news segment, we have government approves construction permit for new type of nuclear reactor for the first time in 50 years. And this is not going to be using water either. It's going to be using molten fluoride salt as the coolant rather than water, which they say will be able to operate at lower pressure, making it safer and more flexible. Molten salt's got similar liquid properties to water. You can pump it, it'll flow through pipes. It has really great heat capacity. Salt is cheap, stable, and non-toxic. Nicholas Smith, Deputy Director of National Reactor Innovation Center, had explained to Chemistry World. Getting the construction permits took nearly 2 years. And he says that hopefully the project will be successful and come online and begin producing power, and that it's the first reactor of its kind and that others will hopefully follow, opening up doors for decarbonization, but also directly using heat from it to produce power. So that's really interesting. My only concern is that when there's some sort of incident, which hopefully there won't be any sort of incident, but the good thing about water is that you can put in water, like it goes empty and you can just put it in again. But if the pumping stops of this salt, it will like solidify and turn into a rock. Then will you have to just chisel it out again to be able to re-add the coolant? It seems like it might be complicated, but the other downside to water is that it can explosively evaporate. So that's not great either. Hopefully salt won't be able to explode, but water can explode. So it has its advantages and disadvantages, and that's one of the things that we have to work out with dealing with the universe and physics and stuff like that. But let's keep on going. And this is going to be increasing levels of strangeness, like I said. And this one is for all of the workaholics out there or people that don't get enough sleep. This is something for you to be mindful of. Sleep deprivation has its effects on all kinds of biological, psychological processes, from a Journal of Sleep Research study that was just published. As a clinical psychologist, I have always been interested in how poor sleep affects emotions because this seems to be most directly relevant to mental health, the study author Jared Minkle said. Jumping ahead here, the researchers recorded various emotional reactions in the people that had volunteered. Tests have shown that when sleep deprived, people respond less to information that should evoke positive emotions. At the same time, the subjects perceived the videos with negative connotations as acutely as those who had slept well. Psychologists have come to the conclusion that chronic lack of sleep can deprive people of their positive emotional stimuli, such as joy and humor, leaving them alone with negative experiences. This can have an effect on a person's mental health and overall well-being. Researchers recommend getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep as much as possible to maintain healthy emotional responses. So that was really, it's kind of obvious that lack of sleep would affect mental health, but the fact that it will completely rob you of your joy and humor and positive emotional stimuli, and that's kind of like a subconscious thing, like a frog boiling in water type of thing, that you don't even realize how deep in the well you are until you're like way down in it. But apparently just getting a good night's sleep or a couple nights sleep will help you out. So that's something to keep in mind, that you got to keep on getting a healthy amount of sleep to have a healthy mind And like I said, that sounds obvious, but in today's world where you're having to work so hard, so many hours a day just to be able to keep at the baseline, that you have to maintain your health as well as everything else, and that includes sleep. So you got to get your 8 hours or whatever most of the time, according to this. Then we have this is pretty cool, even though it's from DARPA. It's an ingenious concept that I've thought about for a long time, and other people have as well, not just me, but many people have thought about this for decades. So I'm glad that we're finally coming to fruition here, that something's moving, and this is called Liberty Lifter, and it's DARPA's ground effect X-plane that will haul hundreds of tons of cargo per lift. So this is going to be really good for disaster aid. If they can just ship in insane quantities of stuff, like as soon as a disaster happens. And the cool part about it using this ground effect, which it will explain a little bit later, is that it will save so much costs, and you don't have to be super high up in the air, so it's even less energy expenditure. It's very efficient transportation for massive quantities of cargo. So the first thing that I think of is disaster relief, but I'm sure that they have their own interests. Since 2022, DARPA has been developing the Liberty Lifter, which is a project to develop a relatively inexpensive seaplane that has the cargo volume of C-17 Globemaster III, which is massive, transport aircraft, yet can carry hundreds of tons of cargo. In addition, it is supposed to have a ferry range of 6,500 nautical miles, or 7,500 miles, 12,000 kilometers. Aurora's candidate is in the preliminary design phase 1B of its development cycle, which places special emphasis on risk reduction and the steps for designing, building, launching, and flying the completed X-plane using low-cost manufacturing methods. Virginia Tech is working on the sensors for detecting and predicting surface waves. So it'll explain the engineering bit in just a second, but it travels really low to the ground, or the ocean in this case. So if there's a big wave coming, that's a big problem. So they're going to have to figure out how to predict these ocean waves, like it's saying. And can you imagine a rogue wave? I mean, that'll take out the plane, possibly. It would be interesting to see if they're even thinking of that, or if with radar they could detect the plane, or I mean the wave, really far away. I don't know much about rogue waves. I don't know anybody that does know a lot about rogue waves, but yeah, they're gonna need these sensors, because should it get stormy or something, it could get really, really rough. And hopefully this thing's gonna be built like a tank. And they have like a little 3D model of it, which kind of looks like the Spruce Goose. If you know what that is, that's like an old 40s plane that they tried to build. It's basically, imagine a giant cargo plane with a bunch of propellers and sea floaties on the ends of the wings, if you could call them that. And then it's got a double tail section, which normal planes only have like a single tail typically. One particular challenge is dealing with rough seas, because the Liberty Lifter flies using the wing in-ground effect, where the aircraft flies low and gains additional lift by exploiting the air trapped between the wings and the surface of the sea. This, in calm conditions, is great, but when things get rough, the aircraft needs to be able to compensate to fly safely. So basically, they have these little pockets of air that get trapped beneath the plane that gives it extra lift, and it's not having to fight as hard. But if a giant wave comes and disrupts that air pocket beneath it, then the plane is very suddenly left without a whole lot of lift, so it would go down. So they got to be able to figure out how to solve that issue, which I'm sure that they're going to. But they're going to need to have a lot of sudden lift. And it says that they did that by, or at least attempted to stabilize the plane by making changes to the prop-driven Liberty lifter, including swapping out the T-tail for a pi tail, which is like a double, like I was talking earlier. Essentially, this means that the stabilizers are held up by a fork-shaped rudder instead of a solid one. According to the company, this allows an aft cargo door while making the airframe more structurally efficient. Another innovation is to move the floats from the side sponsons on the hull to the tips of the wings for better performance while keeping costs down. So that's what I was saying, is that on the tips of the wings they have these little floaty things. I'm not really sure what to call them. I guess side sponsons. I'm not sure. But having the floaties on the ends of the wings keeps everything up. It seems like the wings are gonna have a whole lot of weight on them. Hopefully that wing is very, very strong. On this next one, we have NASA selects Texas A&M as first approved exploration park facility. And what does that mean? NASA and the Texas A&M University system announced an agreement Thursday, February 15th, to lease underutilized land in Exploration Park, a 240-acre development in the agency's Johnson Space Center in Houston. The A&M system will develop a facility to enable human spaceflight research and development that enables the commercial space economy. So they're doing R&D in Houston to go to space. The lease agreement will allow A&M Systems and others to use NASA Johnson land to create facilities for a collaborative development environment that increases commercial access and enhances the United States commercial competitiveness in space and aerospace industries. Leveraging this unique role and location, Exploration Park will play a key role in helping the human spaceflight community attain U.S. goals for the commercialization and development of a robust space economy by creating an infrastructure that fosters a multi-use environment where academic researchers, aerospace companies, and entrepreneurs can collaborate with NASA and solve space exploration's greatest challenges. So they're going to solve all of space exploration's greatest challenges, they say. The Texas A&M University system has a long history of supporting space-related research, and Texas A&M University has been a space grant university since 1989. This new agreement and planned facility will allow us to build on our space tradition and help us to be a major part of the commercial space economy, and that this location will be in use for a potential of 60 years. In the coming years, NASA and its academic, commercial, and international partners will see the completion of the International Space Station, the commercial development of low Earth orbit, and the first human Artemis campaign's mission establishing a sustainable human presence on the moon in preparation for human missions to Mars. So they say that this is to bring commercial and cargo stuff to the moon and orbit, and that NASA and Texas A&M is going to solve all of our space problems. I feel like they have the solutions already to this stuff. I mean, with the whole DoD saying that they already have the secret space program, I just feel like this is a form of disclosure of what the military already has, and that they're just going to be telling us stuff that they have behind the doors. And this is continued disclosure, but it's very, very quick. It's happening faster. I have right here The Quickening by Art Bell that I always have right next to me whenever I'm filming this. And that's something that you will hear over and over, is The Quickening. And he talks about all of this stuff in this book. The diseases, the weather, the UFOs, the societal and somewhat socioeconomic changes and stuff. And this was written a long time ago. And I just really look up to the guy, and he made very entertaining stuff and talked about climate change whenever it wasn't very popular at all. So kudos to Art Bell and for leading the way to this stuff, and he would be extremely interested in this. And I think he might agree with me that this is just straight up like a form of disclosure, and that they already have all of this stuff worked out and the kinks are already worked out. I'll just give a quick update while we're on the NASA topic and doing strange news. If anybody listened to the first episode, which I know is like a far ways back now, and the production quality has gone up a bit since the first episode, so I hope that things are getting better, slowly. But my point is that the first episode we talked about NASA sending lasers into space that had higher download rates than we have on Earth. The people in space have higher download capacities than we do on Earth. They just updated their satellite transmission dishes and all of this software and stuff to make it even more. They increased their capacity even further. I'm not really sure how much. It might be multiple times. I'm pretty sure that it is. We got to go and look at that. And heck, I'll just bring it on right now. Okay, so I found it, and I'm just going to read this one little section because it's exactly what I'm talking about. The update that we are looking for on this laser system that they can stream Netflix in space, like from Jupiter, faster than we can on Earth. And apparently it wasn't good enough for them. They needed even better stuff, which just, you have to ask yourself what is going on in space. Like, how much capacity do they actually have? And they said that this is going to make it to where the people on Mars can communicate back to Earth really easily. It says it's a high tolerance optical system built on a 34-meter flexible structure made with a hybrid antenna at JPL. All roads lead back to JPL, among some other ones. We use a system of mirrors, precise sensors, and cameras to actively align direct laser from deep space into a fiber reaching the detector. Tehrani hopes that the antenna will be sensitive enough to detect the laser signal sent from Mars at its farthest point from Earth, 2.5 times the distance from the Sun to Earth. Psyche will be at the distance in June on its way to the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter to investigate the metal-rich asteroid Psyche. The 7-segment reflector on the antenna is a proof of concept for a scaled-up and more powerful version with 64 segments, the equivalent of a 26-foot, 8-meter-wide aperture telescope that could be used in the future. And then it's going to be used for higher data rate communications capable of transmitting complex scientific information, video, high-definition imagery, in support of humanity's next giant leap, sending humans to Mars. I feel like we already have people in space that are watching movies and stuff, or maybe they're like communicating or whatever. But they probably are communicating, but obviously, but the question is how many? If they need that much data, because scientific data is only ones and zeros, right? I mean, it's binary. It's like math equations. So, but a movie and images, that's a lot bigger than just text or math equations or sensor readings. I mean, maybe sensor readings could get really big in data size, but I'm not sure. But it makes me question what is going on out there and how many people are out there. So when I first found this article, it was actually a different website that I found it on. And it was kind of like a doomsday type article saying that the end of the world was going to come. But it cited this article. And it is newish. And it is saying that this year the magnetic poles are going to flip. and it even gives the months and probabilities and stuff. But I looked up whether or not that is going to be cataclysmic, and it said from all the data that I could find was that it like potentially could be really bad in conjunction with the sun, but that the magnetic poles flipping do not cause damage necessarily on their own. So the magnetic pole flip isn't going to like destroy the world. Where the risk comes in is that the magnetic pole, while it's flipping, it gets weaker, and then we're in the middle of a strong sun cycle. So the combination of the two is what gets risky. So, but that's a very localized type of thing. Like in the early 2000s, Norway got hit with a solar flare. Well, part of Norway, not even the whole country, and they had like tens of thousands of people that had been affected by power loss for a little bit of time. I'm not sure. It was several weeks, but it wasn't the whole world. You know, that was like a small area of Norway that lost power for a couple of weeks. So my advice on the whole magnetic pole flip situation that is coming to light this year is to just have enough stuff like normal for a couple weeks. You know, you should probably have enough stuff for a couple weeks regardless of the magnetic poles flipping or whatever. So have enough water for, you know, a couple weeks, enough food for a couple weeks, and you'll be all right. But this is from Southwest Research Institute of Boulder, and at the very end, I have here, Northern Hemisphere is likely to undergo a polar reversal in August 2024, 50% confidence range spanning from June to November 24, while the Southern Hemisphere is expected to reverse its polarity February 2025 with a 50% confidence range from November 2024 to July 2025. So, it's not going to be the end of the world. It is very interesting, and we could have anomalous weather type of stuff in the air. Not necessarily, possibly storms, but more like northern lights type of storms is what I was trying to say, in areas that might not have it previously. But it doesn't say that it's going to be the end of the world. I was looking into this as deeply as I could, and I mean, there's more evidence. Let me put it to you this way, guys. There's more evidence to say that we're going to be all right than not. Should you have a couple weeks of water? Yes, you should. But I don't think this is going to be the end of the world. So as this whole solar magnetic storm thing starts to get more and more popular, just try to keep your head on you that it's not going to be the end of the world. A lot of people are going to say that it is, and but it's just, that's like the type of stuff that we hear nowadays. As everybody's saying it's the end of the world, you don't have to let it control your mind. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It's more likely to be the end of the world if you believe it, because that's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You fall into that line of thinking and then it happens. But it doesn't have to be the end of the world. In fact, it was like NASA, Life Science, and National Geographic explaining the science of why it wasn't going to be the end of the world. Now, I know we've kind of been dipping on NASA a little bit, but I mean, some questions need to be asked about NASA, and they're going to be asked on this podcast about NASA. If there's a secret space program, I will, now that they've said that, they cannot put the cat back in the bag. I want to know what NASA knows about it. They're obviously working together with it. That laser thing is involved with it. And are they telling us the truth about the solar cycle? Who knows, really? I think that they are, personally. I think that, this person has, like, the science behind it. So, I mean, wouldn't they be telling us some, like, this article is not saying that the end of the world is coming. If you read this article, it's not what it's saying. But anyways, I could go on about this weird tangent for a while, but we'll just move on. Here we have the evolution of the biological revolution that we had mentioned. Uh, New obelisk life form is hiding inside of humans. Yeah, we just found a whole new form of life. Well, and here's the strange part about calling it a life form is half the people say that it's life and half the people say that it's not life. And if you listen to my previous episode, then you would remember the guy that was talking about redefining what we think of as life. Well, this kind of falls into that category because it's controversial whether or not we would call this life or not. But I would, because it's replicating and it has probably influences on stimuli and stuff like that. We'll figure it out one day. But here we go with it, is that obelisk-like life form is hiding inside of humans. Strange microscopic structures may whisper ancient evolutionary secrets. Stanford University researchers have discovered virus-like life forms that exist inside of human mouths and guts. They are smaller than viruses and not considered standard life. See, standard life, I guess. But that's just a whole rabbit hole. The genetic material can still transfer information that can be read by a cell. We had no idea these things existed, and we certainly aren't certain yet what they do. They certainly aren't certain. It's an interesting use of phrase. We're not sure if it's exciting or not that scientists just discovered this new life form inside of our bodies. It is exciting. I can answer that question for them. Tiny bits of RNA, smaller than a virus, colonize bacteria inside of our mouths and gut and have the power to transform information that can be read by a cell. Dubbed wildly weird by the team of Stanford scientists writing about the find in Nature, the discovery now has a name: obelisks. And we don't really know their end goal. It's insane, said Mark Pfeiffer, a cell and developmental biologist at University of North Carolina. The more we look, the more crazy things we see. Named obelisks because of their weird rod-shaped structures, they are even smaller than viruses, but they can still transmit instructions to cells. What they're saying, however, we just don't know. The microscopic entities, according to an explanation written in The Conversation by University of Bath microbial evolution professor Ed Feal, calls the obelisks circular bits of genetic material that contain one or two genes and self-organize into a rod-like shape. They are potentially itsy-bitsy life forms. Stanford calls them viroid-like. A viroid is one step down from a virus. While a virus needs a host to replicate, that hasn't slowed them down. We've lost count of how many viruses this world has to offer because they are so plentiful. But a viroid is even more simplistic. A scrap of genetic RNA that cannot make proteins, but can regroup, and has been known to plague flowering plants. The newly discovered biological entity falls somewhere between viruses and viroids. He added that, like viroids, the obelisks have a circular, single-stranded RNA genome and no protein coat. But like viruses, their genomes contain genes that are predicted to code for proteins. And that isn't like the Stanford researchers just found out one of these things. They located nearly 30,000 distinct types of obelisks. And that's just for starters. They were located in every demographic corner, and they were typically found in the mouth, but also in the gut. Now the task becomes sussing out if these obelisks are friend or foe. Scientists want to learn about the host cells that they need to replicate, how bacteria and fungi play roles in their function, and what their true purpose really is. So that's really strange. And before we go on, it was talking about RNA and proteins. And just for the viewers, and I'll describe it for the listeners, I got some pictures here that I wanted to show people that this right here is what a protein looks like. And if you can imagine a roller coaster that just goes around crazy turns and like the craziest roller coaster you can imagine, the track for it, that's what a protein looks like. And it's all curled up and just chaotic looking. And that's like a 3D model. And then on the right, you have like a chemical, molecular type of version of it, where you can see it from how all the different chemicals link together. And I don't feel like most proteins are shown like this. And this is why I feel like it's important to kind of go back into what we're talking about. Because prions have been in the news lately, which is like a protein disease. And last episode, we were talking about how we need to redefine how proteins work and what they even are. I had to go back and check. If you remember Philip Ball from the book that I'm referencing here, How Life Works, A User's Guide to New Biology, that the proteins are constantly moving. They don't just stay in one shape. And while this picture is like not moving, you have to imagine this, that some proteins are constantly moving. So that roller coaster track of just like jumbled chaos is also constantly moving, which is really difficult to imagine. And it's hard to put that on a textbook as well, with a still image. So imagine this thing moving. And then we are going to move into some pictures here. This is 2006. This is an actual picture of a red stained protein, which is, it's pretty dark and you can't really see much. It's just like a red squiggle basically. So then that was in 2006. Then we started getting these pictures with the electron microscopes. This is 2008 using green protein dye. And you can see that it's just a really like a bunch of hairs scattered all around. And finally, we have another picture here of different proteins, and you can see that some of them are hair-like, and then some of them are more globbed up with hairs inside of them. It's just very interesting. But what it makes me think of with the hairs is that this is like a spider web. And that's crazy to think that a protein is like a spider web, but he was saying that we need more analogies. We need better analogies for proteins to think of, to be able to tell the public about it, because nobody can conceptualize these things in their mind. We have this spider web roller coaster that's constantly moving, and if you can imagine that, that's closer to what we're talking about with the protein than just like one Lego piece plugging into another. That's I mean, it's a example, but it's not the best example.